It's a real pleasure to be here at Baylor again. This is my third visit to Baylor, and I'm just amazed at the growth of the school and what's happening. And this building did not exist when my last visit was here in the late 90s. So thank you for being here. One of my topics here today is about warm-ups, and I think that we all suffer from that problem. We've got to do something with the voice, we've got to make something happen. We're working with church groups, we're working with different ages, and we're working with all different ages. And I'm talking about the lady in my particular church choir who's had been in the choir for 60 some odd years and wanted still to process, and took her time getting down there. So we've all been there, and we've all had to deal with it. First of all, I want to recommend a book to you by Brenda Smith, which is dealing with the aging voice, and it's put out by Plural Publications, and it's dealing with those people that we have in our choir that, everything's calcifying as such. So you might want to look that up. It's Brenda Smith, and it's dealing with the aging voice. So it's voice pedagogy, and it gives you some hints as how to deal with the voice. I've worked in church music for about, I would say probably 30 years of my career. I've been at it now, teaching and conducting. My first experiences were as a conductor in a church choir, which was a volunteer choir, and I was 16 years old. So I'm 66 this summer, so it tells you a little bit about what I've been doing. I'm just going to be real with you. It doesn't matter. I'm not retiring. I'm at this for the rest of time until my wife makes me retire. So this is called the purpose-driven warm-up after Rick Warren. I'm using a little stealing here. I didn't ask him either, so plagiarism is there. Okay, guys. I didn't break it. I can guarantee you I didn't break it. They're trying to figure it out. So, I think part of the problem is that we have a very short period of time. I don't know about you. My church choir met for an hour and about a half, and we would do some sort of introduction. Did you fix it? Okay, might be a battery issue. So with my warm-ups, one of the things I really want to make sure is that they don't become routine. I have to change it up. I have to make it interesting each and every time that I go up with my choir. And the problem is, if we listen to what's going on in voice studios, at least at the collegiate level, we have a set of warm-ups that we use consistently. We have them for a purpose, but they never change. And it doesn't matter what the age of the person is or whether they're a graduate student, undergraduate. We go up and we probably do something that's up an octave, and we twirl around at the top and we come down, and it's done on an E vowel, right? We've all been there. We've seen that. We're not working with those type of singers. We're working with different singers. We're working with the volunteer for the most part. I want to make sure that I've got them engaged mentally. And that really means that I have to happen from the beginning. And that means that the warm-ups have to be something that engages them to be better at everything. And they're going to put the pieces of the puzzle together. It's a time to focus them. I don't know about your choir. My choir would come in, and everything in the world had occurred to them in the last half hour as they drove in. And living in Miami, where my last choir was, or living in Los Angeles, you can only imagine what traffic does to a person. And it does exactly that, and they're frazzled like this. And it's a reminder of our ministry as people to help them understand that we're here together now. So many of the warm-ups are kind of like this. This is a Larson, and it says, and I'm sorry, it's not larger. Smash your left hand down right about here 3 times, and twice about in this area, then 3 times right down about here. That's Louie Louie. Okay, and so that's what warm-ups have become for many of us. They become so routine that there's just a pattern that goes along. So every warm-up has to have more than one purpose. And I will give you warm-ups, don't worry, that's going to happen. We're all looking for the solution. That's why we have so many people doing it. There's got to be a tie between your warm-up and the music you're going to do. What is in the music that you can use to create warm-ups? And I always kind of let them know a little bit about the why of warm-ups. Why are we doing this? What is the purpose of this particular exercise? I set up the expectations for warm-ups. I want to make sure they understand what we're working on and why we're working on it. And we have to understand the age of the voice again as we go into this. It helps them get the pieces of the puzzle together. And we've got to remember that the voice is halfway between the heart and the head, right? So somehow we have to touch them in some particular way. So a friend of mine, Don Brenniger, came up with this little bit of acronym. It's called PROART. Posture, respiration, onset. Onset. Now, you all know what that word means, right? It's the start of breath. It's the actual start of breath. And it's also the start of sound. Articulation, resonance, technique, and finally, efficiency. So these are the things that we want to create in our warm-ups. Now, how long should a warm-up take? Well, I've got 100 minutes maybe, less than that, maybe 75 to 80 minutes of rehearsal time. And that means I've got to be very efficient, and warm-ups don't mean to take a lot of time. So for physical relaxation, one of the things I love doing is something with laughter, because it brings them into focus. Body awareness, just to walk, just to actually have them walk in place, move a little bit in your choir loft, in your choir room. I'm constantly asking them to move. I talk about Alexander technique. You may know that term. That's an efficiency for us. That's to get the body, and you know, it's at my age, the body doesn't stand up straight in the same way, so I've got to be very efficient with the way these points all go together. Some of you are smiling. I can be like that. Here's a little exercise. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. Ping ping pong ball. Ping pong 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 ball. Ping pong ping pong ping pong ping pong ping pong ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. Ping pong ball. Do you know that one? Good. Will you do it with me? Here we go. Ready? And I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. Ping pong ball. Ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong ball. Ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. Ping pong ball. What is that? William Tell Overture, right. Okay, so what's the other part of that? What am I doing with the sound? Keeping it light, absolutely. I'm not putting weight into the voice. What else am I doing? Where is that resonance? Articulation, and where is it? It's very far forward, isn't it? It's not back here. Okay, it's also using a lot of breath. Did you notice that in yourself? Now let's add something to it. Here we go. Ready? Finger. Here we go. Ready? Go. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. Ping pong ball. Ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong ball. Ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. I've got a nose like a ping pong ball. Ping pong ball. Forward resonance, very forward, right? So right there, you've got breath moving, and you did something too. When we started this, you laughed. Okay? So you laughed a little bit. So one of the things I want to always encourage in that warm-up process is the ability for people to laugh in my rehearsals. One of my former students, Philip Swan, who teaches up at Lawrence Conservatory, is writing a chapter for a book that I'm involved in. It's called About the Conductor as Servant Leader. That we cannot be that conductor like Toscanini anymore. We have to engage, we have to lead from within. And that's part of what I'm trying to do, is get the choir to become part of my leadership. So that there's a trust issue that doesn't exist. So they believe in me and we do these things, and I'm out there making a fool of myself, and so are they, and we love doing that. Another thing we can do is back rubs and back stretches. You know what I'm talking about? You've done those? This? Here we go. So many of you do this. You stand up, give me my guinea pig. Can you face that direction? So we're doing this, and I have choir members that say, oh, I don't want to be touched. Right? I know that. Yeah? Okay. About the third week of this, they're in there. Often. Not all. Often. So then I'll say, okay, our first piece is what tempo? Give me a tempo indication. Presto. Okay, in a dynamic. So I can have them do this, right? Do this. And then we can go back, we can do some cat scratches, we can turn, and we can do unto others as we have done unto us. Turn the other cheek. Okay? So it's that same idea, and I'm engaging the choir in the process of getting them into this. They are giving me dynamics, tempos, and I can say, what's the tempo in the first piece? They take out the first piece, it happens to be vivace, and off they are. And it gives them an opportunity to become involved in what I'm doing in this process. It's also helping reinforce ideas that are in the music. So we can add in legato, staccato, tenuto, dynamics. We can put in crescendi. We can say over the next 12 beats, we're going to crescendo it. So that's one of the other things that we can do. Ugandan hand claps. You may have seen Rod Eichenberger do this. Isn't that interesting? So there's an example. You do silent sets, right? You can get them engaged. What is this doing? I never see. My choir doesn't watch. I have to get bigger and bigger. Here's in a way of getting them into the point of watching you, so that your gesture does not have to be as large. It gives you another opportunity to get something to happen. We can do dynamics. We can do tempo. We can get them to respond. And we didn't have to say a lot. We just started this way. And you all kind of got the message. Hopefully your choirs will do the same thing. My church choir, I was lucky in my last church position because we did a lot of weddings, around 350. So we had to provide, it was huge. It was in Miami, and we were right across from the Biltmore Hotel. So I had a corps of singers that were there that made their money basically off of singing all the weddings, right? That was one of the ways they did it. But the corps of singers then gave me this choir of about 60 voices, which allowed us, and I'm talking corps of singers, I'm talking 6. So there were 60 people in the group that were just people that wanted to be there. So we used that as a way to really get them engaged in making music. We used all of these ideas to help them move forward. Simon says, we just did that, right? We can do this. We can get them moving this way. We can get them physically engaged because that's really necessary, especially after a long day. Some other mental focus activities, right? You can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right? You can do that. Now let's take away 3. Will you sing that with me? That's probably too high. 1, 1. Sorry for baritones and altos. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Move and take 3 and 5 out. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 6, 4, 2, 1. You can start that very easily, but what it does is it starts to get them engaged in what's going on. And they've got to be thinking. They've got to be thinking. I find that to be really interesting to do, and I can do that. You can add gestures in there. 1, 2, clap, whatever. You can ask them to be engaged. This works as well with junior high, and we're not that far away from junior high. We are not that far away. Okay? So you can do this, and you can get them engaged as well. 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know that one. And as long as we don't, I was listening during the reading session. Something that I noticed you were doing was on Joey Morton's piece, the Rise Up, is that the one? It was called Rise Up. And we had that repeated D on the bottom, and it was the least syllabic stressed syllable. Rejoice, rejoice. And we were adding the weight on the bottom. It was a very interesting thing because it's rejoice, rejoice. And we're treating it with weight on the bottom. We rejoice, rejoice. And we can't get back up there because the weight of the voice is moving in an incorrect way. So by doing something that's 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, there it is, it's light. And notice how much piano I've used? None. Dr. Seuss, there's a new warm-up book out. You can make your own Dr. Seuss warm-ups. Many of us grew up with Dr. Seuss, some of those books, and I have those sitting in my office, and my grad students sometimes ask what's that for, and they think it's a callback of my daughter who's 32 now. No, it's not. It is just something that I use, and sometimes when we need to do a warm-up, there you build your own warm-ups out of that music. And what it does is it recalls something that was fond in the back of the mind. There's that time when you as a child were singing, or your parents were reading to you, and you were reading. And so these things are things that trigger the mind of that adult that's sitting in front of you and brings them back a little bit to childhood. Something that I think is really critical. Will you do this exercise? Do any of you have a real choir room? Really? I never had one in my church. I had a rolling blackboard in a basement that we had. So that was the way I worked in all of my churches. Always secondary facilities, never important enough to warrant a good choir room. But if I have this, will you try this? Can you all see this, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, so here's a pattern. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, so you have something in your music that's not working. Why not take it out of context, put it up as one of your warm-ups? Why not use that then to hand out or to give them something? So there's a pattern, it's triplets. You're having a problem with triplets. You're having a problem with the syncopation. You put it up on the board, you use it, you then engage them to be part of it, and you put it into the physical gesture. So you're dealing with them. And this is a wonderful little Bob Chilcott thing that I've used a lot. For me, it's the easiest thing to do. Or you take part of your choir and they clap the even rhythms, and the group that has the syncopations, you use them to clap the syncopations till they get it. But putting it up on the blackboard or giving them a handout with the exercise done, really critical for us. Breath. I can only tell you that I think the greatest thing that we can do for our singers is give them a chance to learn to breathe properly. Because everything comes from breath. Everything we do comes from breathing. So one of the things I do with even my church choir, we would do a retreat. Do you do retreats with your choir? Yeah. And I'd bring somebody in and I'd have them teach a little bit of breathing technique, or I'd have somebody from Alexander Technique come in. So if I'm sitting in a chair, and we're going to assume this is a chair, and I want them to feel the breath, I can grab my ankles if I can, or take my arms right here, and if I ask them to breathe, they're going to feel it right against their gut. Okay? Do it yourself. Just feel it. And you'll notice something. The breath can't come here. It cannot be engaged up here. It has to be down here. It has to be breath down there. So they can get a feel for where the breath should be. It's a sense of just expansion down here, and it's getting them to feel that. And you know, we are so busy preparing the music for Sunday that we forget that we've got to teach the tools that are lifelong, that will help them and help us later on as we start our journey with them over a course of 20 years. The best choirs are the ones where the technique is taught at the beginning, and then you lay the rest of the stuff on top of it. You keep the music easy. Let me say that again. You keep the music easy. Simple music, simple unison music has a beauty of its own, and it is the way we can teach so well. You get a great arrangement, you find a simple tune. I used to use one by Paul Choland called Children of the Heavenly Father, and that old Swedish hymn. And I used that because that was a training piece for my choirs, whether they were collegiate or a church choir. I can use, I'm not going to try this here, but push-ups against the wall, because I'm worried that if I do, I'm going to have handprints over it. But it'd be basically something to this effect. If I take this, and I put my hands here, and I breathe, where is the motion? The motion is this feeling down here. This, if I take that, if I'm having problems with my sopranos, and I do something like this, they're going to stop worrying about that high note. They're going to bring that down a little bit. So if you try that, if you've got a large hall or a space, by doing that, you're bringing the posture into alignment, and you're allowing them to breathe low down here. You can do this exercise if you've got people that are limber enough to do that. Okay? But again, this is keeping the breath from going to where you see it in your church choir. Don't you see it this way? That's the way you see it. So how do we change that pattern? We change it by giving them tools that help remind them from week to week. Onset. You have a pencil in your hand? Take your pen or pencil, do this. Do C. C. Will you start the S with the motion that's going here? So C. C. Be easier on the S. Ready? Go. That's where they need to be. Our problem is we have training. Most of us have taken private lessons in voice for a long time. If we use that same voice with those that are in front of us, we're not giving them the model that they need. Let me say that again. If we're using the voice that we're trained with in front of them, it's like your voice teacher that used to sing at you and say, no, sing like me. Right? Your voice teacher was 65 years old. It doesn't work very well when you're 16 or 17. So you want to make sure that the voice is really engaged. And I use that rolling pencil because you'll find that your people will then take the attention off of the sound that's coming out. So I'm using opposites here, or things that can keep them from doing what's normally in their pattern. They're going to go, and they're going to prep, and they're going to hold, and then they're going to stop, and then they're going to go. Right? And we want that to be one motion. We say, sing on the breath, or sing in one motion. So I'm looking for a way of getting them to go. This is one of the ways I can do that, is keep their mind engaged. And I can use C or Sue in this case, whichever vowel I like. C, C. Now your choir's going to do exactly what they do. Fixed space. C. Let me say that again. The vowel has to change. C, right? And we know that when we're singing our music, that there are spaces where the vowel is, or the music's going a fifth or more, and we've got to change the vowel in some shape. So you'll have a word, and you try and keep that same space, the same equality, it's not going to work. It's just part of physics. But we can't talk about physics. We can't just say, relax. Relax that. Let it go. See. Doesn't that sound a little, excuse me, constipated? Sorry. But it does, doesn't it? See. That sounds, really to me, it sounds pushed. And I want to keep it free, and I want to keep air in the sound. So I want to make that work for me. So I'm using hands, I'm using motion. I love lip trills. I love lip trills. I think they are so fun. And even the little person that doesn't have the ability to do it, I just tell them to take their fingers, do this. What did you do when this sound was made? You were in the bathtub and you were blowing bubbles, or in the swimming pool, going like that. That's the memory we have. But it is a relaxation here. So you can take them, right? Move them up, bring them up without putting pressure. And what's the good thing? There's no tension here, and there's lots of air going into that sound. So if there's something to be said, I want air in the sound. I talk later on about consonants, one of my presentations. These are IPA symbols for what we call fricatives, and these are wonderful warm-up ones. I don't believe in starting on E, A, A, O, U. I want to always put the fricative in front of it. Vive, vo, vive, vo. It's because there's breath management going with that. There's air going underneath it. It moves it, and it allows us to keep that stop from occurring. Do you understand what I mean by stop? The glottal stop. E, V, Z, Z. So use those particular ones are great. They're forward, they're resonant, they can feel them, they can feel breath. Onset, we talked about that word just a minute ago. I've been doing a lot of reading because I'm doing this chapter in this book, and it's about constant usage in choral singing. And as part of that, I've had to go read a lot of head books. And part of the discussion is about coordinated onset. And what does that mean? That means that the air is moving prior to the sound beginning. So it's like you're on a surfboard. You don't put the surfboard on the water and then get on it immediately. You wait for it to go. It's in that same idea that the airstream is moving, and then we start. So, fairest Lord Jesus, fairest Lord, or what was our first hymn this afternoon? All hail the, your choir will sing, all hail the power of Jesus, right? And it really needs air underneath it. All hail love, because that's going to give them health. And these chords won't be worn out after an hour and 10 minutes in your rehearsal. So we want to make sure that that's going on. That onset for me is a big thing. Right, Clint? Yeah, Clint knows. Chest compression. What that means is they take a breath in your choir, and watch this, and they do this. And then they go like that. And the best way to take that and avoid it is take your hand, place it right here. Put the hand right here, and now just go. So, do that. So, yeah. to be up here. You don't need the elbows at the ears, or the shoulders at the ears. We just need to bring this down. We need to relax this. So what we're trying to do here is most of our choirs, and then they drop, and then they're set, and there's no freedom in that. So it's this ability to be flexible. So I call that chest compression. N's and NGs. We sing the word Magnificat. Magnificat. Will you sing that for me? Magnificat. Good. I love that word because there's so much wonder going on. Would you put your finger underneath your nostril? So these are liquids. So there needs to be air that goes before the sound. There needs to be air through your nostrils. Here we go. Ready? Go. For me, that's a key, and that's a monitoring thing. And I go through my score and I underline M, N, and G's in all of my scores because they're wonderful sounds for you to sing. When I do humming, Beautiful Savior, I was raised Lutheran, okay? So we sang Beautiful Savior as all good Lutherans do. And we had the Christiansen arrangement, and we had the choir underneath on a hum. And if you change a hum to an NG and leave it open, you'll have resonance. And the other thing that you'll avoid is the sound going back here, and the tongue going up, and all of that stuff getting caught up back here. It sounds wonderful, it feels wonderful in the back of their throat, but it's really not carrying in the congregation, especially if your congregation has no mics in a carpeted room. Okay, so what we're trying to do, you're smiling, you know what I'm talking about. It is Baptist here, isn't it, right? Yes, and as part of that, that's part of the tradition, is not to have the acoustics that we really need to have great music occur at all times. So we have to battle that, we have to come up with a better way. But I think, how many sopranos do I have? Will you, let's do this. And we got tenors? We got tenors? How many tenors do we have? Good. Basses? Good. Will you do this for me? Bass here, the fifth and the tenor. The alto on the A and soprano, I know it's only a C sharp right there. Will you sing that for me on just a hum? Ready? Go. Now will you change it to an NG? Do you hear a difference? Do it again as a hum. Ready? Go. Now will you be your church choir? And now go to the NG. Yeah, for me it's a critical difference, especially if I have a soloist or if I have a piece in it with any type of humming, I just change it. I just make it an N or an NG and it makes it come alive. It's one of my little things to go with resonance and with placement of sound. Talking about there's a book, I told them to get it, it's called The Naked Voice. It's by a man named Stephen Smith. Stephen Smith is at Northwestern. He taught at Juilliard, and he taught at the Moore School of Music here in Houston. Fabulous voice teacher. He talks perhaps, there are probably 4 or 5 pages, 5 chapters that you need to read as choral conductors. Because what he talks about is speech-based singing. Speech-based singing. It means that we can establish the timbre of a person's voice in the vernacular. You know how to categorize a voice. When you hear them in the vernacular, you know that because I'm teaching at USC, the largest international school. We have the largest population of international students in the U.S., percentage and numbers-wise. So if you look at my choir, there's usually at least I would say 10%, 15% Asian in my choir at any given time. And we had a young man named Daniel Kim, and couldn't categorize that voice, couldn't figure out what he was. And then we asked him to speak in Korean, and all of a sudden the voice changed. And the voice changed because the voice is monitored by your environment, and so he was trying to match the timbre of the voices around him, rather than in his own native tongue, and the voice dropped because of that. He was no longer a baritone, he was a low bass, because that's where that voice spoke best. So be aware of the vernacular being the way to find out what their voice category is, not necessarily range. Range has very little to do with it. So if I've got to do a quick placement, we're going to do that this afternoon after we have a half-hour break, I think. I'm going to do voice placement. I'm going to ask some of you guys to come up here, and we're going to place you around and show you how that works a little bit. I'm going back to Stephen Smith, talks about using the N sound because it's the most easy sound to sing. Ni, ne, na, no, nu. Do you do that? Ready? Go. Ni, ne, na, no, nu. Will you do it on an M, please, which is the one we always do? Ready? Go. Ni, ne, so my ear automatically tells me that you're out of tune in the M. The M is out of tune because it has a different sound. We modify, we do things different with our body to sing that M sound. Me, ni, and I can use my hand. Ni, ne, na, no, nu. Right? I can bring that sound out in this direction. I can make sure that it's going this way. So I'm very interested in that, and I think because I really believe text becomes important in worship. And I hate the bulletin that has all the words printed because they can't understand them. And so I'm always looking at a way to make the sounds come out more. So that's one of the things we use. Glory to God, right? Messiah. Glory to God, glory to God. One of the greatest mentors for me was Robert Shaw. And what we learned from him was substitution of consonants. We learned the GK consonant switch, we learned the RD consonant switch, we learned the shadow vowel from him, really, and that came out of his time with Fred Waring and the Pennsylvanians, right? So we know that there's something there. If I have a G in my music and it's high, I will either substitute it or I will eliminate it. I have no problem with eliminating text in high passages for sopranos. I don't care what the composer wrote. The composer doesn't have to sing it. And I can say this, Joseph Martin is a fabulous composer, but there are times where the soprano tessitura is up there. You know, you're a pianist. You didn't learn it that way. You didn't learn it from the vocal standpoint, so that's our job. He doesn't expect us not to fix those things. We have to. Light, 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 right? So we've got to make sure that our choir in their warm-ups is learning some of these. Sleep. That's just a little bit of that sound. Zing, zing, za. Can you do that for me? Ready? Go. Zing, zing, za. Good. We use that Z more. Ready? And go. Zing, zing, za. Is it in tune? Where are we missing it? We're missing the first one's on 3, but coming down. Za, za. Do this, right? Here we go. Zing, zing. We're going to throw a frisbee. We got 5 down the football field, and he's going to win the frisbee championship. You know what I'm talking about? Zing, zing, za. We're going to add those 2 motions. Ready? Go. Zing, zing, za. 2, you're using activity, aren't you? You've actually got physical motion. I think that you have to add some physical motions to a lot of our warm-ups. Otherwise, they become concrete and we become the frozen chosen, the pillar of salt at the back. Okay, we don't want that to happen. I use this. All of my PowerPoints are up on the website, and I'll tell you about that at the end so that you can get those if you'd like to see some of these so you can remember them. But that 1, 3, 5, you may sit down or you may sit up. Using contrary motion or contrary ideas is a good one. Please sit up. You'll see that for the first time you use that statement, not knowing what to do. Your choir is able and wanting to move. If you can move in circles, if you can dance, if you can make things happen, make it happen. Use motion in your rehearsals. Descending first. All of my warm-ups are based on a book by Father William Finn, choristers, St. Paul's choristers in Chicago. He was the music director there in the 1920s. And he had a book called The Art of the Choral Conductor. And what he talked about was the fact that the voice needs to go downwards to start. Now let's talk about that. How many of you study voice? How many of you had lessons? All of you good? How many of you ever had a lesson where they started downward vocalization? One person in the room. No, my first year of college voice was everything was up. I was 120 pounds and I was going to be a hell-in tenor, according to my voice teacher, who had his pedigree from Juilliard, and that's why I chose it. And at the end of the year, this 18-year-old boy could barely sing again. And so I remember that because it changed the way I started doing warm-ups. I believe in downward vocalization. I don't believe in things over a fifth. I don't think you need to go over a fifth. According to William Bernard and Charles Hurt, there's a break in the voice about every minor third. So if there's a break in the voice every minor third, what does that mean for us when we're taking them and we're going how many of you watch your choir, all of the members of your choir do that? Not many of us. We have a large choir, we can't do that. We can do that in the voice studio, that's fine. But in the choral room, we can't do that. So, do that. So. Will you use your hands and do that? Ready, go. So. Okay, now will you do this for me? Go. So. Ready, go. So. So it's the energy at the ends of phrases. I noticed in your music, as you guys were singing in the reading session, that there was a tendency to sit on last notes of phrases, and there were a lot of those, where we just don't let the tone spin, we let it stop. And if we can keep them doing something like this, I know it's hard, there's this, and then there's this, but if we can do that even on a hymn that we're going to prepare for Sunday, we can use that as part of our warm-ups. Everything starts from the descending. Why? Because we're bringing the head voice down, and that's the way you learn to be a lifelong singer. Anybody can have cast iron vocal cords. At some point, God tells you it ain't going to work anymore, and you need to find the solution, and the solution is to bring the head voice down. That's preaching to the choir right here. Use no more than a fifth. Octave is at the outset, and in my church choir, I would never do octaves. I just couldn't do it. They just weren't capable of doing that. My mother sang tenor as well, so from lifelong smoking. Drop-ons, high notes. I have a passage. I was talking with Dave Turwin, the organist who's here, and he does the National Lutheran Choir, and we were talking about Paul Moss, the wonderful organist choir director up in Minnesota, who passed away maybe 5-6 years ago. And Paul had a piece called Even So, Lord Jesus, Quit It Down. You remember that one? The sopranos go up to a B flat. You know? And I just remember always having that crisis of how am I going to, who's the one soprano that can sing the B flat? Because that's all I need. But I remember that when I was teaching, that I would always, as a conductor, start going down like this as they went up. It was kind of an interesting thing. And my wife said something, she's a voice teacher as well. And so we started experimenting. And with my choirs, I'll sometimes tell the sopranos, as they go higher, to just do this. Just to dip down. So, and if I can start to engage this, what's happening? There's no tension in that. It's right there. So, or I can go, that's in my warm-ups too. Here I'm bringing this tension out of the body. Because what do most sopranos do when they get higher? Isn't that what they do? They usually stretch the neck and push the neck back a little bit. Oh, tenors don't. One of the things you can say to your singers, and this is something Mary came up with my wife, and she said, just tell them to keep their chin parallel to the floor. Keep their chin parallel to the floor, they'll never have a problem. Because it's a tube. It is strictly a tube. The air goes through, goes up, and goes out and over. And what we should be doing is worrying about the tube being not scrunched. With sopranos, sometimes you can do this. If you're finding that it's very tense right here, put their finger right back here. As they go higher, just have them press a little against their finger with that loose and straighten it out. Not straighten, making force, but go, you can do, You don't have to do that. What happens if I do that? You don't want to hear. I don't want to hear. Okay? But that tension is what we're trying to avoid. And it's what comes in because of the habits they have as singers, don't they? That's that thing. Tilt the head just slightly back in the soprano part at points. Yes. Sitting in church or in your rehearsal, put your hand here. Go, What do you notice? What do you feel against your hand right there, the palm? What do you? Your breath. You feel warm breath, don't you? What do you think happens if you do that with your choir? As you go higher, what happens to the air? It's not there. It's not. They disengage the breath. Right? Have you thought about what happens with the amount of air that's needed to go up? I say put more breath in the sound. It's not really true. It's just keep the breath there. It's about breath pressure, making sure that the breath is moving and the air is moving, and there's air going against your hand is one of the easiest monitors that you can give that to your choir, and you can say, put it in your hand right here, and go, keep the even. Most of them will disengage. And you can take passages out of your music. If you have a fourth or a fifth or something that you're having problems with, double check it right here. Put it into their hand. Have them feel the sensation. Have them be aware of what they're doing with breath flow. Well, this was that finger there, but there's also another thing I do. I'm notorious for going up to my tenor section and doing this. And I do that. I'll do that in all states, or I'll do it in my choir. And it's just to make sure that they're not doing funny things here, but to keep this really relaxed. And the conductor, we're the model of all that, right? We are the model. Tuning exercises. When Jesus wept, We can take one of those row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 merrily. That's a warm-up. It's a beautiful warm-up. You do it for me? Ready? Go. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life's but a dream. Good. We merrily, 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 merrily. We make those lips less punctuated. Ready? Go. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. So if we did that, you start. Ready? You go. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, gently down the stream, life is but a dream, life is but a dream. So I can use that as a warm-up. Why not use that as a warm-up? Why not use things that are familiar to us? Why not sing, "Oh Shango, I love you," or a hymn, or something that they can really relate to. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Marilyn, happy birthday to you. How much weight am I putting in that sound? None. We have to keep them agile. We have to keep the breath moving. We've got to make sure that becomes part of our process. You can compose your own tunes, your own exercises. There's a book, everybody's putting out warm-up books. I love warm-up books. They're not the solution. The solution is what's in your classroom, what's in your choir, what's going on in there, what am I hearing, how do I fix that problem? Analyzing, fixing. That's what I have to do, and then I put them into the warm-ups so that I know exactly where I need to move next. If I hear something with backwards vocalization, in other words, I was talking about here and singing like this, you know, and they sound like that, they do right. And the Canadian mouthpiece, I've got to figure a way to get that sound forward. So I'm going to bring all the consonants forward, and I'm going to play with those consonants forward. I believe that every choir should have a piece or a piece of music or something that you can use to do tuning exercises. And I believe that I didn't use piano but once. I am not a fan of the keyboard. I love keyboard music. I love having a great accompanist. I had that for the last 3 years at USC with a young man named Rob, just a fabulous pianist. But I don't use piano as the basics of my choir all the time. Now, I'm not in your shoes. You may need to use piano to teach music. But I think that we need to get off that instrument sooner, or the organ, so that we're less likely to use that tuning as we go forward. If you can, solfege. In Texas, you all know solfege. You know, so that's a good thing to use. Tuning. Do you know what the harmonic series is? Do you know what that is? Do you remember that from a music class somewhere back? So it's octave, octave, fifth, then the third, and then whatever color notes you have. So I give those notes as the way that I want to give the notes in my choir. So if I'm doing an acapella piece, I'll do an octave, octave, fifth, third. I'm going to give pitches. The other thing with that is I need to tune something. I listen for octaves first. So I have everybody out, make sure the tuning is done in the octaves, and then I add the fifth. Make sure that that tuning is done, and then add the third. So the color notes, for me, you know, that's the Morgan Lawrenson notes. It's the Dale Worland music. It's all of that. And again, I'll make sure that you get my website where all of this stuff is. Here's an easy one. This is, I'm out of time. This is a Chilcott tuning example. Bob and I and my fifth grader son went to Australia and New Zealand, and I was teaching conducting classes. And so Bob and I and my son, Alex, we had a lot of great experiences. I asked Bob if I could use these exercises in these presentations. So I'm looking for tuning exercises. There's a Don Craig 20 choral warm-ups. It's just a great little, it's an octavo. You can throw it in there. You can write your own. You don't need to do anything beyond that. But write some exercises. Get them into the Eric Whittakerisms, right? the seconds and the moving up in just stepwise motion, doing some of those things to get their ears working. This was Mr. Shaw. We don't have the choir that does that. Okay? You know these? Right? Those aren't things that we can do, but these are some of the examples that Mr. Shaw used to use. This is from Pam at Pam Elrod at SMU. She put all these things down, and there's just a dozen of them. Things like 16 counts, 32 counts of changing the pitches. Here's some thoughts. Don't play the same warm-ups over and over again. Here it says, this is family circus. Mommy, tell Billy not to play the same song over and over again when he's practicing. And really that does a lot in terms of warm-ups as well. Be aware of how to build those warm-ups. So let's go back. What's pro arte? Pro arte is that process of looking at warm-ups. What should they include? How can we get them functioning in the shortest period of time possible? How much time do you spend in warm-ups? 5, 10 minutes? Yeah, it's about max if you've got an hour and a half rehearsal. How much time do you spend on devotions? 5, 10 minutes? Or sometimes longer, depending on the person that's doing the devotion. Yeah. Think about that being a devotional part of your work, your ministry. Find the time to put those warm-ups to help tie the pieces of your puzzle together. Make sure that what you're doing on a daily or a weekly basis in that choir gives them some foundational stuff that they can take away and say, boy, I feel really good about the rehearsal today. That was fun. Find some exercises that give them joy. It's not about the process. It's not about the product. It's about the process that we're getting into. Use music more than once. Don't use the anthem just once and then turn it away. And use it more than once. My mindset is I'm training my choir to get better and better and better. If I use music twice in a season, it's okay if I'm doing something that gives me more time to prepare another piece. I used to go back through that library and look for things. I also had a minister who would call me on Saturday night and say, I think we're going to change the title or the sermon topic, and I want you to pull out this anthem. So it was just the way I have to live in that particular congregation. But take a look at some of these things. There are 1,000 warm-up books out there. There's nothing that can substitute for what you have between here and there. Your ears will tell you what you need to do. There are enough support mechanisms to help you with this. My website that is up there is joemichaelscheibe.org. And you can just go up there, and all of my PowerPoints are on there. It just makes it very easy. That way, if you miss something, and I don't want to go any longer, that gives you all of those PowerPoints, and you're more than welcome to look at them again.